Hello my friends, today we are gonna design this beautiful admin dashboard using React. This is the homepage. We will have different widgets here, and right after we are gonna show a progress bar component and this interactive chart. And we are gonna add a custom table here. Let's check out the list pages. We will use an amazing data table that we can select our items, sort them, or filter them. And here we will be able to delete items or display a single item using this button. In this project, you are gonna see how easy to create different pages using functional components. And also you are gonna learn how to add a dark mode option for your websites. It's an amazing project for your portfolio and a great admin dashboard for our future projects. And finally, we are gonna deploy this dashboard using a hosting service. To do that, we will be using Hostinger, one of the most popular hosting providers and the sponsor of this video. It's really cheap, really fast. I've been using their services for a long time and I could say I never had a single issue. You can deploy 100 websites, you will have more than enough storage, and the best thing is you are gonna get a free domain and a free SSL certificate at this price. It's amazing. You can choose any time period here, and if you use the link in the description below or Lama Dev coupon code here, you are gonna get an extra discount. After choosing your payment methods and entering your information, it will be ready for deploying your websites. If you are ready, let's design this beautiful dashboard and deploy it here. Okay, I created my folder here. It's just an empty folder and I'm gonna create my React app. To do that, I'm gonna open my console. By the way guys, if you want to learn about VS Code shortcuts like this terminal, like this sidebar or any other awesome shortcuts, you can check the card on the top right. There's an awesome video for that. Okay, I'm gonna create my React app. To do that, I will write npx create React app. And I'm gonna install inside this folder, so I will write dot and enter. During this process, let's check out our font family. In this project, we are gonna use this font family, Nunito. It's a really nice font family, as you can see. Only thing you should do is choosing all those styles here and copying this link here. I will copy this. As you can see, it's ready. I'll go to index.html and I'm gonna paste my link here. Like that. Let's close here. And I'm gonna delete some unnecessary lines here, like here, here, here. Logo, we don't need that. And those comments. And this link, React admin app, and I'm gonna delete here. Okay, it's cleaner right now, but how we are gonna use this font family. But before, let's see what's inside our app.js. This is the main.js file. When we run our application, it's gonna work. As you can see, there are some codes here. Let's start our application and see. I'll say yarn start or npm start if you are using npm. And it's opening a new tab here and it's gonna show my application. By the way guys, if you are already a follower of Lama Dev, I know we are doing same things again and again, but don't worry, there are some new things for you. You are gonna improve your design skills, you are gonna learn new styles, you are gonna learn React Router DOM, the new version, and some other things like SCSS, and our application is here. Let's come here and delete everything, and I'm just gonna write Lama Dev. Okay, as you can see, there are some default CSS styles here, that because it's in the middle of the screen. Let's delete them. We don't need icon, we don't need any logo, this file, robots, let's delete them. And in the source file, We don't need that. We don't need test. This CSS logo. We are gonna create our own CSS files. Let's delete them. And let's delete those imports here. And inside index.js, we deleted this file, this CSS, and I'm gonna clean here. Okay, let's see. So what I'm gonna do is changing my font family. To do that, we are gonna need this CSS line. I will copy, and inside index.html, I'm gonna create here a new style. And for all documents, for all websites, I'm gonna apply this font family. Let's check. As you can see, it has changed. And by the way, there's a space here and here. By default, there's a padding in our application. To prevent this, I will write margin 0. Like that. Okay, awesome. Let's close here. And this index.js. And let's decide which pages we are gonna need. Firstly, we are gonna have a login page, we are gonna have a home page, and in the menu bar, when we click on users, it's gonna show our user lists. When we click on products, it's gonna show us products list. Basically, we are gonna need some pages. Let's create, I will say pages. First page will be login page. And let's create second one. It's gonna be home page, list page, and we are gonna be able to see our single products or single users. So I'm gonna create single page, and finally I'm gonna create new page, which we can add new user or product. Okay, let's create our home.js first. I will say home.js, or you can use JSX. I'm using JSX that because it's really easy to handle HTML elements inside JSX. So let's create our function. I'm gonna use these shortcuts. If you want to learn more about those shortcuts, VS Code shortcuts, you can check the card on the right top. There's an awesome video for that also. And by the way, I was using underscore REFCE, but I don't know why it's not showing up. Okay, anyway, I'm gonna handle that later. I don't wanna waste your time. That because when you use underscore, it doesn't import this React component. We don't need that. But anyway, it can stay. And I'm gonna create my CSS file. But in this application, we are not gonna use pure CSS. We are gonna use Sass. To do that, I'm gonna open new terminal here, and I will say yarn add or npm install and Sass. Why we are using Sass? Because I just want to do something different, and it's really easy to handle your CSS files. You can write nested CSS files, so you don't have to worry about your class names, and it's really easy to handle global variables and functions. You are gonna see all of them. If you're a front-end developer or full-stack developer, you should definitely learn Sass. Don't worry, it's not a different framework or doesn't have different syntax. It's just like CSS. So what I'm gonna do is creating here a Sass file. I will say home.scss. And we are gonna use this CSS file here. I will say import home.scss. Let's come here and give a class name. I will just say home, and if I say home and background color, for example, this color, and if I use this home component here, like that, let's see. Okay, as you can see, purple is here. What's the awesome thing about SCSS? If you write here, for example, h1 class name, let's say title, instead of writing this title here, you can basically move it inside home because it's the child of home div here. As you can see, it's nested inside our HTML file. We can do the same thing here. we can write nested, and I will say color white. As you can see, it works like that. Okay, let's delete here. I will just leave as home, and I'm gonna do the same thing for other pages here. List.js, list.scss, login.js, login.scss. I'm gonna stop the video and come back later. Okay, I created all my pages, as you can see. List, login, new. There's nothing different. I just created my functions. Okay, but how we are gonna change pages inside our application? We see our home page, but if I want to go to login page, for example, or users page, as you can see, it's still home page. That's because inside our app.js, we use only this home page. But how we are gonna do this dynamic? It's really easy. Let's write here yarn add or npm install react router DOM. You here. Okay, let's install. And I'm gonna show you how to use it. So if you search for React Router DOM, let's choose the latest version. And let's read the documentation. I will say installation. We have already installed that. Let's check overview. As you can see, we can use router like that. We are gonna just import some React Router DOM components, and after we are gonna use it like that. I'm gonna show you. Don't worry about that. Firstly, I'm gonna import those components. And here, I'm just gonna paste it. Let's delete all those roots here. And let's decide which components we are gonna use. Firstly, we are gonna have home page. To do that, inside roots component, I'm gonna create a new route, and our path will be just main path, which is just slash. And I'm gonna close here. I'm gonna go to home page, and as you can see, it's here. If I write here anything else, and if I go that path, as you can see, it's here. And also, you can use nested routes. How we are gonna do this? Instead of writing here element, you can come here and create new route, and you can say index here, and after that element and home. It's exactly the same thing as we did before. We are gonna use this path, and our index component will be home. So if I create here another route, and let's say path login, and my element will be login page. Of course, we should just import this component like that. Basically, it's gonna use this main path, and after this slash, whenever we write login, it's gonna go to this component. Let's see our home page. As you can see, if I write login, it's gonna go to login page. Perfect. So let's create others. I'm gonna use users, and I'm not gonna use any element here. I'm gonna write it as a nested route. For index, I'm gonna use my list component, list page. Like that. Let's create other paths. I will say path, and here we can use any parameter like user ID, and I'm gonna change it as single page. And one more, our path will be new, and element will be new page. Let's import them. List, single page, and new page. Of course, they are gonna be lowercase. and let's see. I'm gonna go to users page first. As you can see, it's calling my list page, but if I write here any parameter, any user ID, it doesn't matter what you are writing here. As you can see, we are in the single page. You can change here any user ID. It's gonna always call this single page. And if I write here new, as you can see, it's not taking this as a user ID. That's because we defined here new path, and in the previous version it was not working like that. You had to write exact key, but in this version it's much more easier. And let's create another route. Let's say products. It's gonna call list again, but don't worry, they are same pages, but we are gonna show different lists. We are gonna pass our data, let's say product ID, and new will be new. Products, product ID, and new product. Perfect. I hope you understood how it works. There is nothing complex. After a couple of examples, you are gonna understand better. That's all for our app.js. Let's take care of our homepage. I'm gonna open my home.jsx and let's see what we are gonna create. Before creating anything for the homepage, let's go to homepage, by the way. Okay, let's create our common components, the sidebar and the navbar. They are not gonna be only in the homepage. We are gonna use them in every pages. So let's create that components first. I'm gonna open my sidebar here and let's close pages and create component folder. I'll say components, and inside we are gonna have sidebar and navbar. Let's create our CSS and JS files. I'm gonna say navbar.jsx, navbar.scss. I will do the same thing for here. Sidebar JSX, sidebar scss. Okay, let's create our function. Class name will be navbar, and I'm gonna import my CSS file here. Navbar.scss. I'm gonna do the same thing for sidebar. Let's close here, and it's gonna be sidebar, of course, lowercase. Let's write it here. I will say sidebar. I'm gonna import from my components. Let's close this. And as you can see, it's here. Perfect. So let's take care of sidebar. I'm gonna close here. And inside this sidebar, let me show you what we are gonna create. Firstly, we are gonna have our logo, and then we are gonna have our menu list. And finally, we are gonna create here another div which includes our color options, light mode and dark mode. To do that, I'm gonna create 3 lists here, top, center, and bottom. It's gonna include logo, list, color options. Okay, perfect. Firstly, I'm gonna create my logo. I will say span.logo. It's gonna be Lama admin, like that. And inside center, I'm gonna create a list. It's gonna be ul, and let's say li, maybe span and dashboard. And I'm gonna create other LIs like that. Okay, we are gonna give some styles for them, but before, let's create our home container here. To do that, we are gonna go to home page, and I'm gonna create here home container. Let's say container. As you can see, our container is not here, it's underneath our menu. To prevent this, what I'm gonna do is using flexbox. I'm gonna make them horizontal. Remember, this is our main div, and inside it includes two children, sidebar and home container. If I make this flexbox, let's go to home CSS, I will say display flex, and right now they are horizontal. Perfect. And I can arrange their sizes using flexbox. What I mean by that, let's write here home container, and background color will be, let's say, light blue, and for the sidebar I will say background color light coral. As you can see, they don't have any custom size. What I'm gonna do is writing here flex 1, and for the container I will say flex 2. And as you can see, our container is twice bigger than our menu bar here. If I increase this, as you can see, 1 unit, 3 units. If I say 10, for example, it's gonna be much bigger. Let's make this 6. Okay, it's better like that. And I'm gonna delete those background colors. Okay, so I can close this home page for now and take care of my elements. We have top div here, and inside we have logo. So I'm gonna come here and say top. Let's give height 50 pixels, like that. But how I'm gonna center this item? It's really easy. Again, I'm gonna use display flex, and if I say align item center, it's gonna center vertically. And if I say justify content center, it's gonna center horizontally also. Let me show you. I'm gonna say background color, and as you can see, it's in the middle of our top component, top div. And what about this logo? I'm writing here because its parent is top component. I can write this like that. I will say font size 20 pixels, and font weight will be bold, and let's change text color, and I'm gonna use this purple color, like that. And I'm gonna give some HR here. After top bar, I will say HR. As you can see, there's a line right now, but I can change it. It's really sharp. It's inside our sidebar, remember? It's not in the top bar. So I'm gonna write it here, HR. Firstly, height will be 0, and border will be 0.5 pixels, solid and light gray. Okay, it's still sharp, maybe something like that. Okay, it's better right now. By the way, I can give some border for this sidebar also. Let's copy this, and for sidebar I'm gonna paste it, but this time it's gonna be only right side, like that. But as you can see, it's ending here. That because we don't have any height, I will say minimum height 100 VH, like that. As you can see, it contains all screen and it looks better. Let's give background color. It's gonna be white. Why I'm giving this? That because we are gonna have dark mode here. When we change this color, it's gonna be black. When we change again, it's gonna be white. What about this center? After HR, I will say center, and I'm gonna give some padding left. It's gonna be 20 pixels. Okay, it's too much, maybe 10. Okay, and I want to delete those list styles. To do that, remember we have UL inside center, and list style will be none. And if you are using UL, it has custom margin and padding. To prevent this, I will just say padding 0, margin 0, and we are gonna have only 10 pixels here, which we gave for center div. Perfect. So what I'm gonna do now, I want to change those texts, that because we are not gonna have only text here, we are gonna have some icons. To do that, we are gonna be using Material UI. If you search for Material UI icons, there are tons of icons, and also we are gonna use its tables here. As you can see, basic table, some data tables, and it's awesome. We are gonna use it later. Let's come back these icons, but how we are gonna use material icons. If you watched my Material UI tutorial, it was version 4, but they upgraded to version 5, and also they changed their names. It's only MUI right now, so there are some changes. Of course, I'm gonna make another tutorial for this version, but for now, I'm just gonna show you how to install it and how to use icons and this table. Let's come here. I will say installation, and I'm gonna use yarn, so I will just copy here, and inside my terminal I'm gonna paste it. I'm not gonna enter yet, that because we are gonna install also Material UI icons. So I will come here, as you can see, SVG icons. I need to install this also. I will paste here and I'm gonna enter. It's gonna take a while, and after that we will be able to use those icons. Firstly, let's search for dashboard. Okay, this is nice. I'm gonna just copy this icon. Let's shrink this here, and I will come here. I will paste it like that after CSS, and I'm gonna use this before this text like that. Let's come here and check. Perfect. I will do the same thing for others. It's gonna be users, products, orders. Let's create more. Stats, notifications, system health, logs, settings, profile, and logout. And I'm gonna find other icons here. For example, for user, you can choose any of them. You can choose outlined versions. For example, this one. Only thing you should do is using this component. So I'm gonna do for others. I don't wanna waste time again. It's gonna take a while. And after that, we'll continue. Okay, I created all those icons. And what I'm gonna do is adding some additional titles here. For example, for this dashboard list item, we are going to write here a title. For these lists, we are going to add other title. For these settings, for this user profile and logout, you will see what I mean by that. I will go to this li, and before this li, I will just say p tag, and let's say title. Oops. And let's say main. And for those lists, I will say lists, and maybe here let's say useful links, or just useful, and here maybe service, and finally user. Okay, it's much better. Of course, we are going to give some style for them. By the way, guys, I added a class name for those icons. As you can see, it's just icon. And let's take care of them. I will open my sidebar here, and inside this list, firstly, I'm going to say title. I will say font size 10 pixels, font weight bold, color, let's say this gray color, like that. I will say margin top 15 pixels. It's gonna give margin here and maybe a little bit for bottom. Margin bottom just 5. Okay, perfect. And what about this li? As you can see, they are horizontal, but they are not vertically centered. To do that, we are gonna use again display flags. I will go to li and display flags, align item center, and as you can see, they are centered. I'm gonna give some padding for this li, let's say 5, like that, and I will say cursor pointer. So we are gonna change our cursor that we can click, and when I hover over this list item, I'm gonna change its color. To do that, we can use and hover here, and I'm gonna say background color, and it's gonna be this white and this purple color. Let's see. Okay, perfect. So what about those icons? We can change their colors also. It's inside li, remember? I'm gonna say icon. Firstly, font size will be a little bit smaller, and color will be this color. By the way, guys, we can create some global style file and use those colors as a variable, but we are gonna do this later. Don't worry, we are gonna use dark mode and light mode, and you are gonna understand how we are gonna use them like that. And for the span, remember it includes our texts like dashboard, users, and some others. I will say font size 13. Font weight will be a little bit bold, and color will be gray color, like that. Maybe margin here, margin left 10 pixels. Okay, perfect. It looks really nice. And let's take care of these bottom side color options. So what I'm gonna do is creating here 2 divs, and they are gonna include our colors, black and light color. You're gonna understand better right now. I'm gonna create color option and second one. And if you want, you can create more color options. Let's try. Let's see first. Our center is starting here and ending here. So I'm gonna create my bottom here. Let's say display flags again, and I'm gonna give some margin. Okay, there is nothing inside we can see right now, but let's create our color options. 20, height 20. I'm gonna give some border radius, 5 pixels, and I'm gonna give border. Let's say 1 pixel solid, and our purple color here. And again, cursor pointer. We are gonna be able to click them. And after that, let's give different color for each option. To do that, we are gonna use and child. And for the first child, of course, it's gonna be and here. And for the first one, I will say background color, let's say white smoke. And for others, I'm gonna duplicate this for second child and third child. Let's say something dark, maybe dark blue. As you can see, they are here. Of course, I can give some margin between them. Let's say margin 5. Okay, perfect. You can give more example, or you can delete this blue. It depends on you. But in this project, we are gonna use only light and dark mode, so I'm just gonna use 2 of them. Okay, awesome. It looks pretty good. So let's take care of Navbar, and after we are gonna finish our common components, and we will be able to take care of our container. I'm gonna close everything here. And again, if you wanna learn more about VS Code shortcuts, just watch my other video, and I'm gonna open components, Navbar and Navbar CSS. Okay, let's close again. Inside this Navbar, I'm gonna create a wrapper. That's because I'm gonna give some padding and I don't wanna destroy this Navbar container. By the way, our Navbar is not here. I forgot writing this inside our homepage. Let's come here, homepage, and inside home container, I'm gonna say Navbar, and after home stuff, home container. Let's import this Navbar. Okay, perfect, it's here. So inside this Navbar, I created a wrapper, and inside this wrapper, we are gonna have two items. First one will be our search bar here, and second one will be on the right side, and it's gonna include our icons. Let's do that. I'm gonna create a search div here, and inside I'm just gonna create input, and let's give placeholder search, and it's gonna include an icon. Again, you can go to Material UI and choose your icon, but I've already chosen. It's gonna be this one, and I'm gonna paste it here. Let's see. Okay, perfect. Of course, we are gonna use display flags, but they can stay for now, and we can handle our other icons. After this search bar, I'm gonna create items div, and I'm gonna write each item here. Let's write here our icon, and it's gonna be language option like that. Let's see. Okay, perfect. This is our first item. And I'm gonna create other icons. Let's import them. I'm gonna duplicate this, but this time it's gonna be just one icon. Let's copy and paste them. Like that. And I'm gonna duplicate this and change icons. Here. Here. Let's delete this, and we are going to add user avatar later, but for now they are going to be like that. Before adding any additional things inside those icons, let's make them horizontal. So I'm going to close here and open my navbar here. I'm going to give a height for this, 50 pixels. I'm going to give border bottom. Remember, we gave for sidebar. It's going to be exactly the same border like that. And I'm going to center my wrapper, align item center, and I will say font size 14 pixels and color will be gray, something like that. Let's see. Okay, it looks weird that because our wrapper is not display flags, so it's not horizontal. Let's come here and say wrapper display flags, and also items will be, let's see. Okay, perfect. So let's center them. I'm gonna center this wrapper, align item center. By the way, we forgot padding here. I was going to give padding. Okay, perfect. But what I want to see is this search bar in the left side and those icons in the right side. To do that, I'm gonna use justify content and space between. It didn't work, that because we don't have any width. I'm gonna show you like that. Background color, this purple. As you can see, it's ending here, but if I say width 100%, it's gonna contain all our navbar here, and it's gonna move those items here. Let's delete this. Perfect. Remember, in justify content, we can just center them. In this case, they are gonna be in the center of wrapper, but in our case, we are gonna separate them like that. Let's center those items also. I will come here and for search bar, display flags, align item center, and I'm gonna give some border, solid and light gray, like that. I can give some padding and we can see better. Okay, like that. I'm doing this border that because I'm gonna delete this input border. Let's come here and say input. I will say border none. As you can see, it disappeared. But if I click here, we are gonna see this outline. To prevent this, I'm gonna write here outline none also. And I'm gonna give background color and it's gonna be transparent. I'm doing this that because in the dark mode, if I don't give transparent, it's gonna be still white. Let me show you. I'm gonna say background color, let's say black. And if I don't write this, as you can see, it's black, but our input is still white. If I do that, it's gonna be black also. Perfect. And this search text is, I don't know, it's really big. To prevent this, I'm gonna use placeholder here. We can change placeholder also. And font size, let's say 12. Like that. Awesome. So what about those icons? I will say align item center. And for each item, again, display flags, align item center. In this case, they are going to be centered vertically. And I'm going to give some margin. Like that. And I can make those icons smaller. To do that, I'm going to give some class name here. Class name. Let's say just icon. I'm going to copy this. Here. Like that. Let's choose this icon. Font size, let's say 20 pixels. Like that. So let's create here user avatar. I'm gonna create one more item, but it's gonna include an image. So let's delete here and add our image. I just chose a random image from pixels. You can choose your avatar or whatever, and class name will be avatar. Let's see. Our avatar is here. Of course, there is no style. I'm gonna come here and avatar. Let's make this smaller, height 30, and I'm gonna make this circle. And there is one more thing. We can add here a counter for these notifications and messages. So let's come here for this notification and for this bubble message. I'm gonna add one more div. And let's say, for example, 1. I'm gonna duplicate this and move it here. Let's say 2. Let's take this class name. And I will say with 15 pixels, height will be the same. And background color will be red. As you can see, let's make this circle 50%, and text color will be white. Those numbers will be white, like that. Of course, we can center them. You know what we are gonna do. Align item center, justify content center, and we are gonna center them vertically and horizontally. But those numbers are really big. Let's say font size 10 and font weight maybe bold. Okay, perfect. But how I'm gonna move those here? This is our item, and I'm gonna move those numbers on top and right. somewhere here. To do that, we are going to change its position. I will say position absolute. In this case, we can give any position here. I will say top 0 and right 0. We are going to change them later. I'm just going to show you right now. And as you can see, they are going somewhere there. That's because we didn't make our item position relative. You should always remember that if you are using position absolute, the parent should be position relative. So if I go to parent and if I say position relative, and as you can see, let me make this clear background color. Let's say yellow. And as you can see, this is our item, and this counter position is top 0 and right 0. But it doesn't look good. Instead of 0, let's say -5, -5. And as you can see, it's perfect right now. Let's delete this color. Okay, awesome. It looks pretty good. So we finish our sidebar and navbar, and we can focus on our home container. So let's create 4 small widgets here. To do that, I'm gonna open my home page, and after this navbar, let's create widgets container, and inside we are gonna have 4 widgets. So I can create new component here. Widget. Let's create JSX file, CSS file, and I'm gonna open. By the way, it's gonna be SCSS, of course. Let's say function and import our CSS file. Let's give class name. Okay, so I'm gonna call this here, and 4 of them. Of course, we are gonna pass our props here, but for now, let's take care of our design. What I'm gonna do is splitting this widget container into 2 pieces. First one will be left, second one will be right, left, right, and let's see. Okay, as you can see, they are vertical. To prevent this, we are going to be using Flexbox. So if I go to homepage and CSS, remember we have widgets container. I'm going to make this display flex like that. By the way, I can give padding for this, padding 20. And I'm going to give some space between all those items. To do that, you can go to widgets and say margin right 20 pixels like that. But also, if you are using Flexbox, you can basically come here and say gap 20 pixels. It's exactly the same thing. As you can see, there's a space here, here, and here. Perfect. So I'm gonna close here, and I'm gonna make each item Flexbox also. For each widget, it's gonna be horizontal. Of course, you can give some width here, like that. But if you do that, it might cause some problems. The screen size might be different for each device. To prevent this, just give here flex 1. Using flex is always better than custom width. Okay, let's give some padding for each item. And I'm gonna separate those items. Remember how we are doing this? Justify content space between. This is our container, and first item on the left side, second item on the right side. Perfect. But we cannot see exactly this component. You can give here a background color, border color. You can give box shadow, which is my favorite. I'm gonna copy my code and paste here. I'm gonna show you how you can do this, don't worry. And as you can see, it looks much better. To do that, you can search for box shadow generator on Google, and if you do that, you're gonna see some options here like shift down, shift right, spread and blur. Only thing you should do is copying this code and paste for your CSS. Okay, maybe border radius here, border radius 10 pixels. Okay, perfect. Let's give some height, like that, and let's write our actual texts. For the left side, we are gonna have 3 items, our title and number here, and finally a link. Let's close this sidebar, and I will say span title, let's say users, maybe uppercase. Okay, and second one will be, let's say corner, any number here, and finally see all users. It's gonna be our link. You can say link. And for the right side, I'm gonna write some percentage here, and finally on the right bottom we are gonna add our icon. For the user, it's gonna be user icon. For orders, maybe shopping cart icon. It's gonna be like that. Let's do this. For the right side, I will say percentage 20%, for example, but also I'm gonna add an icon here which shows if it's positive or negative. Material UI icons, and search for up, for example, and we can use this one. Let's import and use it. And finally, after this percentage, we are gonna add our actual icon. I'm just gonna copy and paste that. I'm not gonna search for it. It's exactly the same icon which we have used for our menu, and I'm gonna give class name icon. Okay, let's take this here. As you can see, title, our number and link, but they're horizontal in this case. Let's make them vertical. I will say left side and also right side. It's gonna be display flex, but flex direction will be column. In this case, it's gonna be vertical. And if I say justify content space between, we are gonna separate them like that. Perfect. Let's take care of those items. First one will be title. I will say font weight bold. Font size will be a little bit smaller and color will be gray. But it's too dark, I think. Something like this is better. Okay, perfect. What about this number? Font size 28 and font weight will be thinner, like that. And finally, for the link, font size 12, and I'm gonna give border bottom 1 pixel solid and gray. Okay, perfect. All users. But it's overflowing. Our width is bigger than what we expected. So if I write here width maximum content, it's gonna be ending where our text ends, which is here. Okay, so what about this percentage? Let's take this div, and firstly I'm gonna align them like that. Let's say font size 14. It's gonna be smaller. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is making them green for the positive numbers, red for negative numbers. To do that, we can use another class name here. Let's say positive. I'm gonna say positive, and color will be green. And for the negative one, it's gonna be red. Okay, it's not here. That's because I didn't save. Okay, as you can see, it's green. If I make this negative, it's gonna be red. Perfect. Of course, we are gonna change them dynamically after fetching our data, but for now, it's just a design. Don't forget. And what about this icon? Font size will be 18. I will give some padding because I'm gonna give background color. I'm gonna give this color and border radius, let's say 5 pixels. But I just wanna align this item here. So I will say align self, not items. Remember, items just aligning all children, but align self just aligns the actual item. So if I say flex end, it's gonna go to end of the item. Of course, this background color is not gonna be this one. We are gonna change it. But for now, I just wanted to show you. So we can delete this. Because for each item, it will be different for users. For example, red, orders, yellow, earnings, green, something like that. But how we are gonna decide that? If you remember, we are calling our widgets like that. And right now, I'm gonna give a prop. Let's say type. And we are gonna write here something. For the first one, it's gonna be user. Second one, order, earnings, and balance. Okay. Let's take them here as a prop. By the way, I can close here. I will say type. So according to this type, we are gonna decide which title, which link, which icon we are gonna use here. Let's do that here. I will say let data. It's gonna include title, and if it's money, we are gonna add here a $sign. It's gonna include our link and our icon. So basically, we are gonna change it. That's why we are using let. In this case, we can use if else block or switch case block. Let's say switch case. And we are gonna look inside our type. And we are gonna check it. And our first case will be user. Which means if our type is user, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna change data. I will say title will be users. I'm gonna check if it's money or not. For this case, it's gonna be false because it's user counter. And link is gonna be see all users. And icon will be some material UI icon, which is person outlined. And don't forget our class name here, icon. There's a warning here that because we didn't use a default case, let's make this to prevent this error. If it's default, I'm just gonna break. Okay. For other cases, we are gonna need other icons. I'm just gonna copy paste them. And let's copy here for order, for earnings and balance. Let's change them. For order, it's gonna be orders, view all orders, and icon will be shopping cart outlined icon. And this one, earning is money will be true. Let's say view net earnings. And icon will be, what was the name? Monetization. Let's paste here. And finally, balance. It's gonna be true again. Let's say see details. And finally, this one will be our icon. Okay, right now we have data. We don't need them anymore. Instead, we are gonna write here data.title. I'm gonna write here a condition first, and I will say if data dot is money, just write here a $sign. And also I'm gonna write here the amount, but we don't have any amount. That because we are not fetching any data, we don't have any DB, but for now I will say temporary. Let's write here amount and 100, for example. And I will do the same thing for percentage. Let's say difference or percentage. It's gonna be 20. They are for the design part. In the next tutorials, when we fetch any data, we are gonna change them. Where is our amount? Okay, here. It's gonna be data dot link. It's gonna be difference. And finally, data dot icon. Right now, let's see what we have. Okay, something is wrong. Okay, there is a typo here. Right now, everything works perfectly, as you can see. And for those icons, we can give some color and background color. To do that, I will say style here. Color will be crimson, like that, and also background color, and it's gonna be this color. It's a red color, but as you can see, I just decrease this opacity. Let's see, something like that. And I'm gonna do the same thing for others. For shopping cart, as you can see, it's gonna be this golden color. Why I wrote them like that? Okay, like that. And finally this one, and it's gonna be purple. Let's see. Okay, it looks pretty nice. So underneath those widgets, I'm gonna create a container here which includes two chats. First one will be our daily earnings, and second one will be a little bit bigger, and it's gonna show us our earnings which are made in the previous 6 months. Let's do that. I'm gonna close them and open my home page. Oops, not CSS. Okay. I will come here and say charts container, and inside we are gonna have two components. Let's open our sidebar and create two components. First one will be featured chart and normal chart. Let's create here our JSX as CSS, and I will do the same thing for chart. Okay, let's create functions. Chart CSS, like that. Okay, I can close here. I will say featured. I will close here also and create my function. Class name will be featured, and I'm gonna import my CSS. Okay, let's call them here. First one will be featured, and chart. Okay, it's not here. Let's import manually. Okay, let's see. Okay, what I'm gonna do is giving same style as we did here for this widgets component. To do that, I'm gonna open my CSS and I'm gonna add here charts like that. As you can see, we have some paddings, but I can change this top padding. It's too much, I think. So I can come here and for charts, change the padding for top and bottom 5 pixels, left and right 20 pixels. Okay, it's much better. Firstly, let's separate them. As you remember, it was display flex. So I can do the same thing as we always do. I'm gonna separate them. Featured CSS and let's say flex 2. And for chart component, let's say flex 5. And I'm gonna give same box shadow here. Let's see. Maybe it's too small compared to chart. Maybe I can decrease that. I don't know. Maybe 3. Okay, it's better. Let's close everything and open again. Firstly, I'm gonna give a padding. And after that, we can create our HTML elements. So what we are gonna have here? Remember the introduction. We are gonna have a title here, and I'm gonna add a vertical menu icon. And after that, we are gonna have a circular progress bar here, which shows us how much money we have made today. And finally, we are gonna have 3 items, which shows our target, last week revenue, and last month revenue. Let's do that. For title and icon, I'm gonna create a div, and for others, it's gonna be bottom. Let's write here a title, total revenue. And after that, it's gonna be an icon, of course, component, like that. But I wanna make this smaller. To do that, you can give a class name and arrange the font size, but also you can write here directly font size small, like that. Let's make this top display flex, and we are gonna separate them. Align item center, justify content, space between, and font color will be gray, like that. Let's decrease this font size. I will say title, font size 16, and font weight will be 500, like that. So what about bottom? Firstly, we are gonna have our progress bar. Firstly, I'm gonna make a container for that. Let's say featured bar or chart, whatever you say. And inside this, I'm gonna create a progress bar. To do that, I was going to use pure SVG, but I decided that using a library might be easier here because it's gonna take so much time to explain you everything about SVG. But if you wanna learn more about SVGs, if you wanna design your charts, your animations using SVG, you can check the description in the below. I have an awesome course for that. But for this example, we are gonna use a library. To do that, I'm gonna open my terminal and say yarn add react circular progress bar. It's a really lightweight progress bar. It's really easy to use. And it's ready. Let's take this here and import our circular progress bar here. Only thing I should do is writing here my bar component, and inside I'm gonna say value is gonna be 70%, and I can write here any text, and it's gonna be 70%. Let's see what we have. As you can see, it looks empty. That's because I forgot importing its CSS file. Let's come here and import that. And let's see right now. Okay, perfect. You can arrange this stroke width, by the way. Let's say stroke width 1, for example. We are gonna change it. As you can see, it's really thin right now. If I say 5, it's gonna be enough. Okay, perfect. Of course, it's really big, but we are gonna handle that. But before, let's write here our details. I'm gonna open p tag. It's gonna be title, and I'm gonna say total sales made today. And one more is gonna be a month. Let's say 420 and a month. And one more is gonna be description, and I'm gonna write here some description like that. Let's see right now. Firstly, I'm gonna center them, and after I'm gonna resize this chart container. Let's open up featured CSS, and inside bottom I'm gonna say padding 20, display flags. Of course, flags direction will be column. It's gonna be vertical, and align item center, justify content center, and they are gonna be centered like that. I can give some gap, 15 pixels, like that, and let's resize this. Remember, featured chart, it's our container. I'm gonna say 100, 100, and it's gonna be smaller. Perfect. What about this title? I will say font weight 500, and color will be gray. This amount, font size will be bigger, like that. For the description, it's gonna be thinner, font size 12, and color again gray. But as you can see, it's not centered. To prevent this, you can write here text align center, and it's gonna look better like that. What about those items which I have mentioned? We are gonna have 3 items here: target, last week, and last month. Let's create that. After this p tag, I'm gonna say summary, and inside 3 items. Let's create first one, and then we can duplicate. I will say item title is gonna be target, and item result amount, let's say 12k. And of course, again, we are gonna use down or up buttons like that, and it's gonna show us if we are behind the target or not. So basically, I'm gonna import down and up icons. Let's use this one, for example. And font size again small, like that. Of course, it's gonna be display flags. Let's give style. I will say summary, display flags, align item center, justify content space between. Of course, we cannot see right now because we didn't duplicate this. Okay. Did I say center? No, it's space between. That because, as I mentioned before, we don't have width. If I give width, as you can see, it's gonna separate them. Okay. And for each item, inside summary, I will say text align center, like that. And item title inside, font size 14, color will be gray, perfect. And item result, remember, we have item result, which includes our icon and our amount. Item result display flex, align item center. I can give some margin and decrease font size. Okay, it's much better. And finally, again, I'm gonna use positive and negative one. Oops, it's gonna be like that. Color will be green and the negative one is gonna be red. Let's try. As you can see, it's green. Let's make this positive and this one negative. Like that. Of course, we should change their icons because they are positive. Like that. And their titles. Last week and month. You can change the numbers also, but for now it's enough. It looks amazing. Let's take care of our chart. Let's close them and open chart component and its CSS file. Like that. Okay. Let's decide which chart we are gonna use. I've searched for a couple of React charts. I found React Viz from Navbar. There is a Nevo. It looks pretty good too. Rechart, I think it's the easiest one. And react.js too. All those libraries are awesome, but if you check for their documentation, you are gonna see they're a little bit complicated compared to Rechart. Not that much, of course, we can handle that. But I don't think we are gonna need those libraries. Let's check here. As you can see, there are many options here, but we are not gonna use them. And Rechart is the same. So I decided to use Rechart. It's really easy to use. If you check for API, as you can see, we can use this area chart. It looks awesome. Only thing we should do is giving our data here inside our component and defining our data key. You are gonna understand better right now. Let's install our library. I will say yarn add recharts. As you can see, it's really lightweight. It didn't take that much time, and let's see how we are gonna use it. I'm gonna come here and click on examples, and we are gonna use simple area chat. And here, this is how we are gonna use it. Firstly, we are gonna import those components like that. By the way, I'm gonna close here. We are gonna take care of this later. And after, we are gonna have a data. Of course, we are gonna change it. Don't worry about that. Let's write it here. And finally, we are gonna use this area chart. I'm gonna delete this and paste here. Let's see. Okay, it's here, but it's not exactly what I want. I just wanted to import linear gradient one. Let's check here. Okay, we are gonna use this one. I will copy and I'm gonna change here. I'm gonna save, and okay, it's much better. And as you can see, we have two data here, but we are gonna use just one of them. As you can see, it includes their names and also variables here, but we are gonna just use one of them. So basically, I'm gonna delete this and I'm gonna write my own data, and it's gonna include our month names, January, February, March, just for 6 months, and their total numbers. Let's write here a title, by the way. I will say last 6 months revenue. or user number or whatever you want. And what I'm gonna do is, as you can see, this is the second one. I'm gonna delete this. We are gonna use just one. Its ID is color UV. We can change it. Let's say total. In this case, we should change it here. And the important thing is our area. This is how we are showing this chart. This area will be our total number. To do that, I'm gonna delete this data key. It's not gonna be UV anymore. It's gonna be total, which is our total here. Of course, it's uppercase. And I don't need this second one. Let's see. I saved and it's here. Of course, it looks pretty weird. It's going to infinity, I think. Let's comment this out and check where the problem is. Otherwise, it's gonna crash. Okay, there's a height here and it's 100%. I'm gonna delete this. Or at least I should give any number here. Let's say 100. And it's gonna be really small like that. But the awesome thing is you can give here an aspect ratio. I will say aspect, let's say 2 and 1. It means if width is 100 pixels, the height will be the half of the width, which is 50 pixels. Let's see. As you can see, it's much better. By the way, I'm gonna give the same box shadow here and padding. Let's open our CSS file and I'm gonna make all colors gray. It's gonna be gray like that. And also I can give some margin here. Let's say title, margin bottom 20 pixels like that. So what we can do here? Firstly, I don't want this y-axis. I can delete that. Only thing I should do is coming here and deleting y-axis. Okay, it's much better. And I want to change those colors to gray. For x-axis, if I say color, can I apply this? Let's see. Okay, it's not color. Maybe it's stroke. I'm not checking the documentation, but maybe I should, but it applied. Okay. If you want to learn more about this chart, you can just check examples and check the documentation. But for now, it looks pretty good. As you can see, January, February, it shows every month here. But maybe I can change this grid color. It's here. Let's give class name. It's gonna be chart grid. And I'm gonna give a stroke. It's gonna be light gray, but whiter like that. Okay, it's much better. Why I am using this in this CSS file? That because when we create our dark mode, we are gonna change it inside our CSS file. Otherwise, I could do the same thing here, writing stroke and writing this color. But we are gonna change it in the dark mode. Okay, perfect. There is one more thing we should create inside our homepage, and it's our table. We are gonna create underneath those charts, and we are gonna show the last orders or last users, whatever you want. To do that, let's create a table component. I will close them and I'm gonna open my homepage first. And after these charts, let's create list container. And inside, let's say this title first. And after we are going to create our component. I will say latest transactions. Before creating our component, I will write here list. And as always, our box shadow and padding And of course, as I said, we are going to use a global CSS and we won't have to write them again and again, but just wait, you are going to learn it. Of course, it's not list, it's list container. Okay, perfect. Let's change this title also and create the component. List title. Font weight 500. Color will be gray. And margin bottom, let's say 15 pixels. Okay, awesome. Let's create our table. I'm gonna go to components, table, table JSX and CSS. My function quickly. And finally, class name. Let's close everything and open again. And this sidebar. Okay, we are ready. Let's see first. Of course, we didn't add inside homepage. After this title, I'm gonna call my table. Okay, let's see. It's here. So what I'm gonna do is going to material UI. Okay, this one is icons. I'm gonna go to table. Let's search for it. Okay, it's here. As you can see, we are gonna use this basic table. Let's see what's inside our code. We are gonna need to import some components here, and after that we are gonna have some data. Of course, we are not gonna use any groceries. We are gonna use our own data, and after that we are gonna apply them. Firstly, I just wanna copy and paste my data, and I'm gonna show you what we are gonna use. I'm just gonna copy and paste, and as you can see, there are some products here. They have ID, product title, image, the customer who buys this item, transaction date, amount, payment method, and status. Like that. We are gonna use this data. So let's import our table components. I'm just gonna copy here and paste here. Of course, we can use HTML table, but it's really easy to use. If you don't want to use Material UI, you can check my pizza ordering application tutorial. I just use their pure HTML. And after, we are gonna have rows, we already have, and we are gonna use them like that. And I'm gonna explain everything right now. Let's actually delete this. Class name was table, but we can write it here, doesn't matter. Class name will be table. Okay. As you can see, they are gonna be our titles. Those titles here. We are gonna change them. Let's see what we are gonna have. We are gonna have tracking ID, title, image, all of those values. Basically, I can copy and paste my table cells like that. As you can see, ID, name, customer, date, everything is here. Additionally, I just added here a class name, which is table style. We are gonna make some changes inside style. And here, as you can see, there is some material style here. We don't need that. Let's delete. So what's this key? Basically, it's the unique key of our data elements. As you can see, our unique key will be transaction ID. So I can come here and say .id, and after that we can start changing our cells. First one will be, remember, tracking ID. I'm gonna change it By the way, I can delete them. And second one will be product, because it includes our product name. Customer, date, amount, method, and status. By the way, I don't want to align them anywhere. I'm gonna delete this, and also we are gonna need class name. Like that. Let's see what we have. I'm gonna go to my app, and there is a problem here. Table has already been declared. Okay, we are using table here, and also component name is table. Let's change it. It's gonna be list, for example, and list, and it's here. Perfect. So I'm gonna make some changes here. Firstly, I don't wanna just show here product name. Also, I wanna show its image. To do that, I'm gonna come here, and as you can see, this is our product cell. What I'm gonna do is returning a div here. Let's say cell wrapper, and inside we are gonna have image, and source will be row.image, this image, and after that row.product, which is product name. As you can see, they are really big. Let's change them. I'm gonna open my CSS file, and cell wrapper is gonna be display flags, align item center, and for each image 32, height 32, and it's gonna be 50%, and I'm gonna give margin between this image and its title, by the way, 32. Okay, it's not covering all this border. Only thing I should do is writing here object width and cover, like that. Awesome. So we are gonna have one more change, and it's gonna be our status. For approved transactions, it's gonna be green. For pending, it's gonna be yellow. Let's do that. I will come here, and for this status, let's delete here and create a span. And its class name will be status, but at the same time, its class name will be our status value for each item. For example, it's gonna be status and pending, status and approved, status and pending, like that. To do that, let's cover this with curly brackets, and we are gonna change it like that, and $, and row.status. And finally, I can write here row.status. So according to this status, we can change their colors. Let's come here. I will say status. I will give some padding because we are going to change background colors. I will give some border radius, 5 pixels. And for approved, color will be green, and background color will be green, but its opacity will be really low. I will do the same thing for pending. Color will be golden roads, and background color will be again something yellow, but opacity will be that low. Let's see. As you can see, they are green and they are yellow. Perfect. So it's a nice homepage, I think. We finished our homepage. Let's take care of our users, products, orders, or any other lists here. Okay, I'm gonna close them. Open my sidebar and list page. What I'm gonna do is giving a class name, and it's gonna be list. And inside this list, I'm gonna do exactly the same thing as I did for homepage. So I'm gonna call my sidebar here. And after that, we are gonna have this container. And inside this container, we are gonna have our navbar. And after that, we are gonna create our data table component. But for now, let's say data table. And I'm gonna import my components. Import sidebar from components, sidebar, and sidebar. I will do the same thing for navbar. Okay. Let's see. Of course, I should make this display flags and give flag 6 for this container. That because remember, we have a sidebar here. So exactly the same thing. Let's say display flags. I'm gonna make sure that it's 100%, and after that, this container is gonna be flag 6. Let's close here, and let's see what we have. I'm gonna open up users, and perfect. Let's create our data table component, and after that, we are gonna import material UI data table. Let's close pages and all those components. Okay, let's create new one. Function and CSS. I will create this in advance, and let's create function. Let's import our CSS file here. Okay, it's ready. Of course, class name. Okay, so let's install Material UI data table. I'm gonna open up table page again, but we are not gonna use basic one. We are gonna use data table. As you can see, we can select any of our rows, or we can sort them like that. As you can see, it's really useful. And also there's a custom pagination here, so we don't have to worry about anything. Material UI is the one of the best option. Let's see what we are gonna have. There is one more library here. We are gonna use it. And after that, we are gonna create our columns, rows, and we are gonna use this component. It's that easy. You are gonna see right now. Let's open terminal again, and I will say yarn add data grid. So let's import this. By the way, I'm gonna import all columns and rows. After that, we are gonna change them like that. Let's close here, and I'm gonna use this data grid. Let's see, but before we should import this table here, of course. I'm gonna call my component, and that's all. Let's see. I'm gonna close here. Okay, it looks empty. That's because we didn't give any height, I think. Let's try. I'm not sure that's the reason or not. Let's give here actually height 500, for example. Okay, that's the reason. Maybe let's say 600, and I'm gonna give some padding. Okay, awesome. As you can see, it looks pretty good. We don't need to arrange any option here. It's gonna sort like that. So let's check how it works. I'm gonna come here and close my sidebar. Okay, as you can see, we have rows and columns here. Rows basically represents our data, as you can see, each row will be different user like that. And column will be what we are gonna show in our data table. First one will be ID, header name is uppercase ID as you can see, and its width is 70 pixels. And as you can see, it's here, 70 pixels, header ID, and it represents ID, which is inside our rows, those IDs. Exactly the same thing for others, field first name, which is those first names, and header name will be first name, and it's here, and it's width. And as you can see, you can combine any properties inside your rows. You can do this using value getter. It takes a parameter here, and for each row, take the first name, which is John, for example, or if there is no name, just write an empty string, and combine this with last name, which is Snow. Cersei Lannister, Jaime Lannister. Let's see, it works like that. And also, instead of value getter here, you can use render set. It's gonna take again params, and we can return whatever we want. Let's say return any HTML element here. I'm gonna say span params.row and let's say last name. And I'm gonna create here one more span and age, for example, maybe p tag. Of course, we cannot use multiple HTML elements like that. Must have one parent element. It should be a div here as a parent, or basically you can just write React fragments like that. And let's see, as you can see, Snow 35. Perfect. It's important that because for the users, we are not going to use only their names, we are going to use their avatars. Basically, we can return any image here and after their names. Of course, we are not going to use this data. Instead, we are going to create our own. In this design part, we are not fetching any data, so we should do this in our application. In the next tutorials, we are going to fetch from any DB. Don't worry about that. But for now, let's create a source here. I will say Datatable source or whatever you want. I just created quickly. I didn't change that much thing. As you can see, it's still Jon Snow. I just added an image. All images are the same. As I said, I didn't want to waste any time. You can give different names, different images. We are gonna use it. As you can see, its name is user rows. We can export this. And also, I'm gonna use user columns. Otherwise, here will be really messy. I don't wanna put them here. Let's put it here. I'm gonna say export const user columns. And first one will be exactly the same thing. It's gonna be ID. Oops. We don't need that. Okay. And second one will be user column. I'm gonna apply render cell and show their image and names. Let's do that. I'll say field name, user. Let's give header name. It's gonna be user. Let's give a width 230, and I will say render cell. I'm gonna take the params and return something here. Let's say cell with image. Of course, I cannot do this like that. Instead, I'm gonna create like that and give a class name. Okay. And inside we are gonna have an image. Let's close here. And I'm gonna give class name is gonna be cell image. And source will be params.row.image, which is here. And there's a warning here that because we didn't use any alt, let's say alt avatar, or you can just leave it empty. And after that we are gonna use image, their names, just use it here, params, row, and username, and it's in here. Let's try this. Actually, I'm gonna import this and this, so let's delete them. Okay, I will say import user columns, user rows, data table source. So I'm gonna give it here and give it here, and let's check. As you can see, ID works, user works also, but we cannot see their images. Let's take care of this. I'm gonna come here and say cell with table. It's gonna be display flex, of course. They are gonna be horizontal. And I will say align item center. And after that, cell image. Let's say 32, height 32, and it's gonna be circle. I will give object width. It's gonna be cover. And I'm gonna give a margin between this image and username. Let's say 20 pixels. Let's see right now. Okay, it didn't apply, something is wrong. Oh, why I said table is gonna be image. Okay, perfect, it works. I hope you understood how it works. Let's take care of others. I'm gonna come here and create other one. Field will be email. Header name will be email, and width will be the same, 230. Okay, they are here. Oh, I added some numbers here. It's not exactly the same. Okay. And the other one, I'm gonna actually copy and paste this. Age, and it's gonna be smaller, of course. It's just a number, like that. And finally, they are gonna have a status here. Let's check. As you can see, active, passive, and pending. We are gonna use them. Let's say status. Header name will be status 160, and we are gonna return again a cell render. Return, and let's say div, and class name will be cell with status, and it's gonna be params.row.status, like that. Perfect. But I want to give some other styles for those status. Remember, for the home page, we are using that kind of styles. We are gonna do the same thing here. To do that, remember what we are doing. We are giving a status class name, but also we are gonna use their values. What I mean by that, it's gonna be cell with status, but also it's gonna be params.row.status. Let's use it here. I'll say cell with status. Let's give some padding, and I'm gonna use border radius 5 pixels. And for each item, each different class names, we are gonna use different colors. First one will be, what was the name? Active, passive, and pending. Okay, I'll say active. And green color, we did this before, remember? It's a green color, but reduced opacity. And text color will be green. And pending will be yellow. And finally, passive will be red. Let's see. Okay, they are not here. Let's check this class name. Oh, I said cell render. It's gonna be render cell. Okay, perfect. And we are gonna add one more thing here, and it's gonna be our actions that we can display those users or we can delete them. But I'm not gonna put this inside our columns. That's because we are gonna use it in every data table. It doesn't matter whether it's users or products or orders or others. We are gonna always use them. So I'm gonna create inside my data table component. Let's create here. I'll say const action column, and I will say field is gonna be action, of course, inside an object. Header name, let's say action again. I'm gonna give a width 200 and render cell. We are not gonna take any parameters here. That's because we are not gonna use any row elements. We are gonna return something else here. I will say return, and it's gonna be a div first. I will say class name cell action is gonna be the parent, and inside another div, class name will be view button, view and delete button. Okay, so how I'm gonna add this action column to my user columns? It's really easy. We are just gonna use concat method, and we are gonna add our action column. And as you can see, they are here. If you don't know how concat works, let's say const A 1 2 3, const B 4 5 6, and if I say a.concat B is gonna give us the combined array. So let's give some style for them also. Remember our class names, cell action, view button and delete button. I'm gonna come here and say cell action, display flex, align item center, and I'm gonna give a gap between them, let's say 15 pixels. And for the view button, let's give some padding from top and bottom, left and right. I'm gonna give border radius 5 pixels, and text color will be, let's say, dark blue. And what I'm gonna do is giving either a background color or border. But we already gave background color here, so I think it's better giving a border. Let's say border 1 pixel, solid or dot, whatever you want, and dark blue, but I'm gonna decrease this opacity, something like that. Let's see. Okay, perfect. So let's do the same thing for delete button. I'm gonna copy this, delete button, and I will say crimson, and I'm just gonna copy and paste my color. It's exactly the same thing, as you can see. And by the way, I can give cursor pointer, and awesome, it looks pretty good. By the way guys, you can increase your row number here. Let's come here, and instead of 5 rows, I will say 9 rows per page. Let's see. As you can see, it shows 9 rows. If I go to another page, as you can see, this is the last user. Perfect. It's that easy. We can sort them. We can select them. And we can use view and delete buttons. So let's create single page. We have already created, but let's give some elements inside. I'm gonna go to any number here, any user number. As you can see, this is our single page. And again, I'm gonna give my sidebar, navbar, and single container. And after that, we are gonna display our items. So let's close everything here and open up single page and single CSS. Let's give class name quickly, single, and I'm gonna import my sidebar, single container, and navbar, and finally my container. Let's import them. Components, sidebar, and sidebar. And navbar. Okay, that's because we didn't give our styles. It's gonna be display flex with 100%, and single container is gonna be flex 6. Okay, so I'm gonna split this component again. First one will be top, second one will be bottom, and inside top we are gonna have user information here. It's gonna be left side, and for the right side we can add any chart or something. Let's try. I'm gonna come here and I will say top, bottom, and inside top I will say left and right. Inside left, let's add a title. I will say information. It's gonna be user information, and we are gonna add here our item. I'm not using specific class name like user or product because they are gonna be common class names. We are gonna use it for users, products, or any other single pages. Firstly, we are gonna have item image. Let's say item image. Let's put here an image, a free image, and I'm gonna add item details. But maybe let's make this comment out. Let's start with top. Inside this container, I will say top. Let's give some padding. I will say display flex. That because, as I said, it's gonna be user information, and our chart here is gonna be a little bit bigger. And let's give some gap between them. And after that, I will say left, which is our user information, is gonna be flex 1, and right side will be flex 2, because chart will be bigger. And after that, let's give our padding and bulk shadows as we always do. And let's see. And inside this component, I'm gonna add here the item image. Let's do that. I'm gonna open again. And after that image, we are gonna have some details. Let's do it right now, like that. And we are gonna handle this image. As you can see, there's a beautiful woman here, but it's really big. Oops. I went back. Okay. I will say item display flex. They are gonna be horizontal, and I'm gonna give gap between them, between this image and details text. Okay, let's resize this image. Item image 100, height 100. Let's make this circle and object width cover. Okay, perfect. So what I want to do is adding here an edit button. Let's do that. It's gonna be position absolute, so I can write this underneath left side. I'm gonna say edit button. It's gonna be just edit. Let's take this class name and come back here. I will say edit button, position absolute, top 0, right 0. But if I do that, as you can see, it's not here, it's here. That because we didn't give position relative for parent. Okay, it's here, perfect. Let's give some padding. I'm gonna decrease this font size. And color will be our purple color here. And background color will be this color, but let's change the opacity, something like that. And cursor pointer, like that. Awesome. Maybe some border radius for here. I will say border radius 0.500. Oops, wrong side, it's here. So this one is 5, this one is 0. Okay, perfect. So what about these details? I'm gonna come here and create details. Firstly, I'm gonna add the username or item name. So let's say h1 item name or title. It's gonna be Jane Doe. And after that, we are gonna have different items, which is email, janedoe@gmail.com, her age, her address, country, something like that. So let's create new div. I will say detail item. And first span will be item key. And let's say email. And second one will be the actual email, janedoe@gmail.com. And it's going to be item value. I will do the same thing for, other things like phone. Let's change here. Like that. I hope it doesn't belong to anyone. Maybe let's make this like that. Okay. And address. Actually, I'm just gonna copy paste this. And country will be let's say USA. Okay, perfect. And let's give some style for them. Inside item, I will say details. Remember, this is our container. And inside we have item title, which is Jane Doe. I'm gonna give some margin between this and other details. So it's gonna be 10 pixels. And color will be this gray color, like that. And detail item. Let's give margin bottom for each item, like that. Maybe font size 14, smaller, like that. And finally, item key, maybe font weight bold, color gray, and item value font weight 300, like that. Maybe for this key I can give margin right, maybe too much. Okay, perfect. This title looks really big. What was the name? Let's check. Okay, it's just title. It's inside our left container, but I'm gonna use the same title inside right container also, or maybe inside bottom. So basically, I'm not gonna write it inside left container. Instead, let's write it here. Font size will be 16, color will be light gray, and I'm gonna give some space. Margin bottom 20 pixels. Okay, it looks pretty good. And let's add here our chart. It's gonna be really easy that because we already have chart component. Only thing I should do is coming here and calling my chart component. Okay, it's not coming out here. We should import charts. As you can see, it's really big here. What we can do is, let's open our chart component. As you remember, we have aspect here, but instead of giving this here, I can take as a prop aspect and I can use it here. Aspect equals aspect. In this case, only thing I should do, coming here and giving my prop, and it's gonna be 3 and 1. It was 2, but I changed it. It's gonna be smaller, like that. It's much better. And also I can change this title. Let's take this as a prop also. User transactions or spending last 6 months. I'm gonna go to chart again, and instead of this title, I'm gonna take this here, and it's gonna be title. User spendings last 6 months. Perfect. But if we do that, let's go to the home page. As you can see, it's going to infinity. Let's go to home page. And for this chart, I'm gonna give title, it's gonna be the previous title, and aspect will be 2 and 1. Let's do this again. Okay, perfect. It's exactly the same chart. Let's come back. It looks pretty nice, and of course, after DB, we are gonna fetch our data and show them here. And what about this bottom? We can add our table, remember? By the way, we don't need here y-axis, I can delete. And let's close this. And for bottom, I'm gonna add my table. But what was the name? Let's check. Table component, but its name was different. Okay, list. So I will call list, and I'm gonna import this here. List from table and table. Of course, we are gonna give some padding here and title. Let's copy this title, and for bottom, I'm gonna paste it here, and I will say last transactions. Okay, here, let's take this bottom and, okay, it's not our style, single SCSS, and I will come here and say bottom, padding will be 20. Actually, we are gonna use exactly the same borders, those shadows and paddings. Okay, but as you can see, there is no space here. Let's give some margin. Margin 20, like that. But this space is too much. Maybe 10 from top and bottom and 20 from right and left. Perfect. Of course, it's strange for now because those customer names are different, but we are gonna handle, don't worry. By the way, as you can see, there is a box shadow here. Sidebar, That because it's bottom also, it means we missed something. Okay, single container. Okay, it ends here. We should cover this. And this title also. Okay, perfect. It's gonna take only this bottom inside our container. So we finished our single page also. What about add new item page? Okay, let's open new page here. New and JSX. And I'm gonna import Sidebar and Navbar here. Of course, there is a class name first. It's gonna be new. And first, Sidebar. And after that, let's create new container as we always do. And finally, Navbar. And let's write here test. And I'm gonna import my components. Import sidebar from components, sidebar and sidebar. Like that. Of course, we didn't give any style. Let's give. I will say new with 100% display flex. And new container will be flex 6. I'm gonna go to users and new. Okay, firstly I'm gonna create here a container which includes our title. It's gonna say add new user or product or any other lists. I'm gonna close my sidebar and I'm gonna come here and let's say top and bottom. Inside top we are gonna add h1 tag and it's gonna say add new user. Of course we are gonna change it later. And inside bottom we are gonna have two containers, left and right container. Inside left container we are gonna add an image, and inside right container we are gonna create our form which includes our inputs. Let's say left, right, like that. Let's give padding and box shadow for this container, for top container. I will say top, like that. Okay, but we don't have any margin here. Let's give margin. What about this right side? Actually, I'm gonna do the same thing. I can write it here. I will say bottom, like that. Let's make this display flex. I'm gonna write it here. Okay. And what about their sizes? For the left side, I'm gonna give 1 unit. For the right side, it's gonna be 2 units. So we can use flex, flex 1, flex 2. I will come here and say left, flex 1, right, flex 2. Let's change this title, by the way. We can write it here. It was title or just h1. Okay, just h1. We didn't give any class name. I will say color light gray. And let's decrease this font size. It's too big. Okay, perfect. So what I'm gonna do is adding an image for this left side. At the beginning, it's gonna be an empty image. What I mean by that? Let's create here image. I'm gonna paste my URL. Let's see. Okay, as you can see, no image. That's because we are gonna create here a form, and after adding an image, we are gonna pass that URL here, and we are gonna see our user image or product image. Let's come here, and I will say image is gonna be 100 pixels, and I will make it circle and object width cover, like that. But I can center this item. Basically, I can come here and say text align center. Okay, so what about right side? I'm gonna create form first. Let's come here. I will say form. And each input is gonna include a label. So basically we can write here any container. Let's say input container or form input. It's the most common usage. And inside this, let's create a label. I will say username. And after that, I'm going to create input, which is text. And placeholder will be, let's say, John Doe. But it's a username, not name and surname. Let's say lowercase John Doe, like that maybe. And another div, I'm gonna say name and surname. It's gonna be text again. Let's say John Doe. Email type will be email. johndoe@gmail.com. We can give phone number. Let's make it text again. Like that. It's gonna be password. Type will be password. And let's delete this placeholder. And two more. It's gonna be address and country. They are gonna be text, and we are gonna give placeholder for the first one. Let's give our address and USA. Okay, as you can see, they are here, labels and inputs. And finally, let's create a send button. Like that. So what about image input? As you realize, all of them are text, but when we choose any image, it's not going to be text, it's going to be file. Let's create another input here. And for the label, we are not going to use any text. Instead, we are going to use an icon. Let's import this here. We are going to use it. Let's create our icon component. And type will be file. Of course, there is no placeholder. Okay, it's here. As you can see, this is our icon, and we can choose any file by clicking here. But I don't like choosing file like that. It doesn't look professional. Instead, I'm gonna make this invisible, but whenever we click on this icon, we will be able to choose any file. To do that, I'm gonna use HTML for attribute, and we can give any ID here. Let's say file. If you do that, you should give here an ID, and it should be the same name, file. Basically, it means this label and this input are connected. And if I click here, as you can see, we can choose any file. In this case, I can make this invisible. To do that, I will give here a style. and I will say display none. We can give a class name here and we can make it cursor pointer, and also maybe we can give here a text. It looks naked, I think. So let's write here image. Okay, it's better, I think. Let's give here a class name. It's gonna be icon. Okay, let's take care of them. Inside right, I will say form, and it's gonna be display flex. Right now, as you can see, it's overflowing. To prevent this, I can write here flex wrap. It's gonna be wrap. It means if items doesn't fit in this container, in this right container, it's gonna move them in the second line or third line. Okay. I will give gap between them, let's say 20 pixels. Of course, it looks pretty ugly, but if I give width for each item, I will say form input, and width will be 40%. And I'm gonna give width for those inputs also. I will say input with 100%. And right now, as you can see, it contains all our input container here, which is form input. And let's get rid of those borders. Firstly, I'm gonna give some padding, and I will say border, it's gonna be none. And I'm gonna give just border bottom, let's say 1 pixel, solid and gray. Okay, it's much better right now. Let's center this item. If you remember, it's our label and it contains our text and this icon. I can make it display flex. I will say label, display flex, align item center, and let's give a gap, 10 pixels. Okay. And for this icon, I will say cursor pointer, like that. Perfect. What about this button? I'm gonna move it here. To do that, we are gonna give a width for that. I will come here and I will say button 150 pixels. As you can see, it moved here. And let's give some padding, get rid of this border and change colors. Padding 10 pixels. I will say border none. And background color will be teal. I really like this color. And font color will be white. Like that. Let's increase this font weight. I will say cursor pointer, and I'm gonna give some margin between this button and those inputs. So I will say margin top 10 pixels. Okay, so we can change their position. For this form, you can give space between or space around. Let's try. I will say justify content, space between. And as you can see, it's on the end of the container, but it doesn't look good. Let's say space around. In this case, it's gonna give some space from here and here. And it looks better, I think. If you want to, you can increase this gap. Like that. So as you wish, just play around here. But as I said, we are gonna have different new pages, different page for each list here. For new user, we are gonna see this page, but for the product, for example, we are not gonna need name, surname, phone, or any other input here. We are gonna add our product title, product price, its stock information. So basically, writing them like that is not a good idea. What we can do, we can create here new source. I'm gonna come here and say new file. Let's say form source. And I'm gonna paste my data. As you can see, we are gonna have an array here which includes our input label, input type, and its placeholder, like that. And also we are gonna have product inputs, title, description, category, price, and stock information. So if I go to app.js, and for those new pages, I will say inputs equals user inputs from form source. I will import this, and I'm gonna do the same thing for product. I will say inputs is gonna be product inputs, like that. And also, if you remember, we have a title here and we can change it. I will say title, add new user, and for this one, title will be add new product. Like that. And of course, you don't have to give them as a prop. You can basically detect this parameter, and according to this parameter you can decide whether it's a user page or product page. But it's not only 2 pages. As you can see, we can have more pages here. So instead of writing here switch case block and decide its title or form inputs, I think it's a better idea. Okay, let's use them here. I will say inputs and title. And instead of this text, I will say title. Let's delete those inputs. We are gonna have just one, and we are gonna use map here. I will say inputs dot map, and for each input write a form input, and here it's gonna be input dot label, here input dot type, and finally input dot placeholder. Okay, but don't forget, if you are using map, you have to give here a unique key, and it's gonna be input dot id. That's why we are using different IDs for each items here. As you can see, it's exactly the same page. If I go to products, different inputs, but there's a problem with their labels. Okay. Okay, perfect. And for the users, okay, it works. So we almost finished our page. We are gonna add here image. Actually, we can do this right now. How we are gonna do this? If we choose any image, I wanna show it here. To do that, let's create use state here. I will say const file and set file. It's gonna be use state, and at the beginning it's gonna be an empty string. Okay, it's here, and I'm gonna put onChange method for this input. I will say onChange, and whenever we change this input, which means whenever we choose any image, put that image into file variable here. So I will say set file is gonna be event target files, but we are gonna take just one image, so I will use the first file like that. Let me show you. I will say console log and file. I'm gonna open my console. Let's choose an image. Okay, I just added here an image. And as you can see, it shows us our file here. Jordan.png and its information here. And what I'm gonna do is creating a new URL and changing this image source. Let's do that. I'm gonna delete here. And for this image, I'm gonna use a condition. Let's copy this URL. And I'm gonna say if there is a file, URL create object URL. This is how we are creating new URL using local image. And I'm gonna pass here my file. If there is no file, just use the previous one. So if we don't choose any image, it's gonna show us the previous image. And as you can see, it's already here. It's not a user image, but anyway, it's just a demonstration. Okay, I hope you understood. We finished this page also. And what else we can do? As you can see, we don't have any links here. When I click here, it's not going anywhere. And this logo, maybe we can add our links. Let's close them and open Sidebar. To link our items here, we are not going to use anchor tag. Instead, we are going to use React Router DOM link. So I will say import link from React Router DOM here. By the way, guys, if it looks really messy for you, you can basically use those icons like that. I will say import from material UI and icons material. And don't choose any icon here. Instead, write them here. Like person outline icon, and this one, and others. But in this case, you are gonna import all those icons. But if you use them like that, you are gonna import them one by one. It depends on you. Okay, let's close this sidebar and use our link. Firstly, I'm gonna use it here. I will say link, and I'm gonna cover my logo. And I will say to home page. Let's see. Okay, as you can see, there's a style here, and when I click, it's gonna go to home page. We can delete this style. I will say style text decoration, and it's gonna be none. Of course, colon here. There is no underline anymore. And let's add them for users and products. I'm gonna copy this line. And for this li, let's cover. And I'm gonna change my link here. It's gonna be users. Let's do the same thing for product. Products. I'm gonna click and users page. I'm gonna click here, products page, and home page. Perfect. And we can do the same thing for our table here. As you can see, we cannot click here. Let's open up our table. Okay, as you can see, it's here. I'm gonna cover this with link. Of course, we should import from React Router DOM. And I'm gonna use here users and let's say test. I'm not writing this dynamic, that because we don't have a real data for now, but in the next tutorials we are gonna handle that. Right now I'm gonna click and it's going to single page. And by the way, we can add here add new user button and maybe here a title. Let's come here. As you can see, we don't have any title. I'm gonna say Datatable title, and it's gonna include a title and add button. Let's say add new user, and I'm gonna use a link, and it's gonna say add new, and it's gonna go to users.new. Okay, they are here. Let's give some style and separate them. I'm gonna move this button here, and of course I should give some class name here. I will say class, it's gonna be link, and here I will say table title, and it's gonna be with 100%. That because we are gonna separate them. And font size, let's say 24. Color will be gray, and I'm gonna give some margin between those titles and this table. Let's say margin bottom, and it's gonna be display flex, align item center, and justify content space between. Okay, right now they are separated. So let's give some style for this button. I will say link. I will say text decoration none. In this case, we don't need this style here. Color will be green. Maybe font size smaller. I will say font weight smaller. Like that. And let's give some border. I will say 1 pixel solid and green again. Finally, let's give some padding, border radius, maybe 5 pixels, and cursor pointer. Okay, it's much better, and when I click this button, it's gonna go to the new page. So let's handle this dark mode. When I click here or here, our application background will be black. I'm gonna close them, and what I'm gonna do is creating here a style folder. Let's go to the source, and it's gonna be style, and inside let's say dark.scss. Oops, 2s, and I'm gonna open my app.js and import this style here, which means it's gonna apply for all those pages and components. So I will say import style and dark.scss. So what I'm gonna do is adding here another class name, which is dark. By the way, let's make this lowercase. And when it's dark, we are gonna change some styles here. Let's say .app, and if it's dark, let's make this background color this dark color. As you can see, it's black right now. If I delete this dark class name, it's gonna be white again, like that. Of course, we are gonna make this dynamic. When we click those items, it's gonna change automatically, but for now, let's do this manually and change our styles. And for font colors, I'm gonna use this color, this gray color, like that. They are more visible right now. And if you remember, we have chart grid class name, chart CSS, and as you can see, our stroke is this color, but I'm gonna change it. Let's come here and dot chart grid. It's gonna be this color, and as you can see, it looks better. And what else here? As you can see, our table is still white. I will say table. Remember, it's our main container for this table. I'm gonna say background color this dark color, like that. But we cannot see our table cells. Let's go to table.jsx, and as you can see, we have table cells here, and their class names are table cell. We can change it basically. I will say table cell and color will be gray. Like that. It's much better. You can change them for yourself. By the way, they are in different color. Maybe 111. I don't know which one is better. Darker or previous one. Anyway, it can stay. And what about our Navbar? I'm gonna change color. It's gonna be this gray color, and they are more visible right now. And let's change this border color. It's gonna be softer a little bit. Okay, it's better. And maybe this search bar border, I will say search, and border color will be gray. Okay, perfect. And as you can see, our sidebar is still white. Let's come here and say sidebar background color will be again our dark color, and border color will be again a little bit softer, like that. Let's change those colors and this hover effect. First one will be top and logo. It was purple, but this time it's gonna be this gray color. Okay, let's change this HR. Border color is gonna be soft dark. Perfect. And for UL and LI, I'm gonna say hover, and background color will be this soft color. It was purple, but this time it's gray. It looks better. And what about those icons? It's inside our LI. Remember, I will say icon, and color will be this color, like that. And we finished our homepage, I think. Let's visit our users. And as you can see, they are not visible, and buttons, it's like a website from 2004. Let's take care of this data table. I will come here and say data table, and let's see what's inside. Okay, we have data grid here. We can give class name. Grid. And if you remember, we have here action column, and we have our buttons, view button and delete button. We are gonna change them. Let's come here and I will say data grid, and color will be gray, like that. And we can delete those borders. Let's say border none. Okay, it's better. And what about those buttons? I will say edit button, and also delete button. And I'm gonna make them gray, and I'm gonna delete their borders. But this color is still same. Okay, it's view button, not edit button. Okay, perfect. But the status colors look a little bit sharp. We can change them also. As you remember, we have a data table source here, and we are returning this class name, cell with status. We can use it. Maybe the same color here, like that. And right now it's much better. And if you don't want them all gray, of course you can change their colors. But for me, it's totally okay. I will not waste time. What else we can do? We can go to the new page, and as you can see, all those inputs are white. I will say for each input, make their background color transparent. So everything is ready, but how we are going to change our dark mode? So let's close them and open app.js. First thing you might think is creating here a use state, let's say const dark mode and set dark mode. Let's create our use state. At the beginning it's gonna be false, and you can write here any condition. Let's say if it's a dark mode, write here app and dark. If it's not, just write app. But in this case, to set our dark mode, we should pass this probe for our sidebar and navbar because we are going to change them here. But our sidebar and navbar are not here. We have to set this here and here, and for users, for new page and other page. And in this case, for example, for the home page, we should take this probe and pass as a probe for sidebar and navbar again, and we should do this for every pages. And as you can see, it's not a good idea. We are not gonna use state here. It's not efficient. But what we are gonna do? Let's delete here and this use state. And what I'm gonna do is using React Context API. To do that, I'm gonna create here context folder, and I'm gonna create my context file and reducer file. If you don't know anything about Context API, basically it allows us to reach data from any component. Basically, we are gonna have dark mode variable and toggle function for changing its color, and we will be able to reach that variable and function from everywhere inside this app. So inside sidebar, we can call that function toggle dark mode, or we can use it for the navbar. We can toggle it by using this button. But how we are gonna use it? Let's create our dark mode context, and dark mode reducer. And firstly, we are gonna have an initial state. So I will say const initial state, and it's gonna be our dark mode. We are gonna use this variable everywhere. At the beginning, it's gonna be false. And we are gonna create our dark mode context, and it's gonna be export. We are gonna reach it everywhere. So let's say const dark mode context, and we are gonna be using create context method here, create context, and as you can see, it's coming from React, and I'm gonna pass here my initial state like that. And after that, to reach this data everywhere, we should have a context provider. Export const dark mode context provider, or whatever you say. Oops, context. And we are gonna take here children. That because we are gonna wrap our application with this provider, and this children will be basically our application. You are gonna understand better right now. And what we are gonna need here? We are gonna need a reducer which includes our functions. What functions we are gonna need? As I said, we can use toggle, but as you can see, we have two options here. Whenever I click this button, it should be only light mode. And whenever I click this button, it's gonna be dark mode. And for this button, for example, we can toggle light and dark mode. If it's light, it's gonna be dark. If it's dark, it's gonna be light. Basically, we are gonna have three functions. So let's say const dark mode reducer, And we are gonna have our state. Remember, it includes our dark mode here. We are gonna change it inside this reducer, and we are gonna have actions, which we are gonna dispatch. I know it's confusing for some of you if you don't know anything about context, but I recommend you to check documentation of React, and after that it's gonna be easier for you. And I'm gonna use switch case method here, and I will say action.type. Basically it represents our function name, which is light, dark, or toggle. Let's write our cases. First case will be light. Remember, for this button, I will say return dark mode is false. And for the other one, I will say if our action is dark, let's turn our state to true. Basically, it's gonna be dark mode. And one more case, and it's gonna be toggle. And as I said, if it's true, it's gonna be false. If it's false, it's gonna be true. Basically, I can say state.dark mode. It's gonna look inside our dark mode in our state. If it's false, it's gonna be true. If it's true, it's gonna be false. And it's warning us that because we don't have default case, let's say default, and it's not gonna do anything, it's gonna just return our state. Okay, let's export this. I will say export default. It's gonna be dark mode reducer. So we can use it here. So we are gonna use reducer hook, and it's gonna return us our state, which is dark mode, and dispatch function, which we are gonna dispatch our functions here. For example, if I dispatch this type, it's gonna give us light mode, and others will be the same. We can dispatch this or dispatch this. And I will say use reducer, and we are gonna pass here our reducer, which is dark mode reducer here, and our initial state. And after that, let's return our context provider. What I'm gonna do is writing here dark mode context dot provider, and I'm gonna pass here children, which is gonna be our application, and which values we are gonna use. I will say value, and we will be able to use our dark mode, which comes from our state and dark mode, and also we are gonna use dispatch method like that. There is a typo here, children. Okay, so how we are gonna use this provider? Let's open up our index.js. As you can see, this is our application, and we are gonna wrap this application with our provider like that. Let's import this. Okay, perfect. In this case, our application will be able to reach all data which we provide here. Dark mode and dispatch function that we can change our dark mode. Let's try. I'm gonna open app.js again, and we are gonna use our context. I will say const, and what we are gonna need, dark mode or dispatch. We are gonna need dark mode because we are gonna use it here in our class name. So I will say dark mode, and it's gonna be use context hook, and we are gonna write here our context, which is dark mode context. Okay, let's use it here. I will say if it's dark mode, use app and dark. If it's not, just use app. And as you can see, it's still white, but if I change here, for example, at the beginning, it's gonna be dark mode. And as you can see, it's dark. Perfect. Let's turn back. And right now, we are gonna use this patch for our sidebar and navbar, and we will be able to change this dark mode. Let's open up sidebar. And I will do the same thing. I'm gonna call my context. Like that. I'm gonna import this and use context hook. Okay, but this time, as I said, we are gonna use this patch. And I will come here. For the first item, I'm gonna use onClick method. And we are gonna use this patch here. And type will be light. Let's do the same thing for other color, which is dark color. I will say onClick dispatch, and this time it's gonna be dark. Basically, we are gonna dispatch our reducer functions here. Let's try. Okay, it's white. I'm gonna click here and it's gonna be dark. If I click here, it's gonna be white. Perfect. And what about this one? Let's copy this again and open up Navbar. I'm gonna import them, context, and our hook. Okay, again we are gonna use this patch. Where is our icon? Okay, it's here, and I'm gonna say on click, and this patch type will be toggle. Let's see. I'm gonna click. As you can see, it's dark. When I click one more, it's gonna be light. And it's really important, if you are a React developer, you should definitely know how to use reducer, why it's needed. First, just learn context API, and then watch my Redux toolkit tutorial, and everything will be easier for you. Okay, what else we can do? Okay, we don't need anything here. Maybe we can delete some rows here. It's really easy. We are just gonna use state hook, and we are gonna filter our items. Let's do that actually. And it's gonna be easier for the next tutorials. I'm gonna open my table here. And as you remember, we are using user rows here from our fake data. But what I'm gonna do is creating here a use state. Let's say data, set data, and it's gonna be use state. And at the beginning, it's gonna be user row. And instead of user row, we can use our data here. Nothing is gonna change that because we are still using user rows, as you can see. But what I'm gonna do is when I click this button, we are gonna change our data using set method, and we are gonna filter our items. Let's do that. I will come here. Where is our delete button? Here. I will say on click method, and I'm gonna create a function. Let's say handle delete, and I'm gonna pass my item ID. If you remember, we can use here params, and if I say params.row, it's gonna give us our item, and if I say ID, it's gonna give me its ID. And let's create this function. I will say const handle delete, and its ID. And only thing I should do is setting my data again and take the actual data and filter that and check each items. And if item ID doesn't equal our ID here, it's gonna give us a new data. We are gonna see the rest of those items. Let's do that. I will click, and as you can see, it's not here anymore. I'm gonna keep deleting. Perfect. It works. And what else? It's okay, I think. It works properly. And that's all. Okay, we finished our project. If I forgot something, just let me know in the comments. I'm gonna update the GitHub repository. If I don't worry, we are gonna use this admin dashboard in our future projects. So let's deploy our application. To do that, we are gonna need index.html and our static files. So how we are gonna do this? Let's open our terminal and we should build our application. To do that, I will write here npm run and build. And I'm gonna enter. It's gonna take a while. During this process, let's open our Hostinger panel. After login process, you are gonna see this H panel, and I'm gonna click here. My hostings. As you can see, I have 2 hostings. I'm gonna deploy it here. I'm gonna click. And as you can see, there are many options here. What I'm gonna do is clicking File Manager. And here you are gonna see your main folder. We are gonna upload files inside this folder. Let's click. As you can see, it's empty for now. Okay, it's ready. As you can see, there is a build folder here, and inside we have an index.html and our CSS and JavaScript files. What I'm gonna do is selecting those files and move into my public HTML. I'm gonna open my main folder and I'm gonna open build folder, select them and move into my H panel. Like that. It's processing and it's gonna take a while. As you can see, it was just 5 seconds. It's really fast. And let's check out our domain. lamadev.net, and as you can see, it's here. Let's check our functionalities. Users page. Okay, perfect. It works. And as you realize, our website is totally secure right now because we have an SSL certificate. Okay, awesome. It's that easy. And what else you can do? In your H panel, you can choose subdomains. Let's say admin.lamadev.net, and I'm gonna create a subdomain. Let's say you have another application here and you want to create an admin panel. Let's check again this file manager, our main folder, and inside, as you can see, we have our subdomain main folder here. Basically, you can delete this default file and you can drag and drop your files here. And after that, you will be able to see your project in your subdomain. It's that easy. Okay, we finished our project. I hope you liked it. If you learned something new today, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support Lama Dev, you can use the link in the description below. And don't forget to follow Lama Dev's social media accounts. And that's all. I hope I will see you in the next tutorial. Goodbye.